folks, thank you very much for rejoining me as I continue the conversation around whether the XKR range is easy to live with. Now I appreciate I am in the full fat version, the XKR-S, which a lot of the content on the channel has revolved around recently. However, a lot of the factors that I'm talking about in both the films are common between the XK, the XKR and the XKR-S. Jumping in and out of different vehicles, I've come to realise that a really useful metric for how you're going to get on with a vehicle and how that relationship might develop is how you feel when you initially jump in it. Getting in, starting up and taking the XKR-S out for a drive is really unintimidating. Visibility all around is really good. You have obviously got the lovely carbon fibre rear wing at the back, and that takes up a little bit of your rear view mirror. However, you can see the car, the traffic that is behind you, and it doesn't impede your view too much at all. Mirrors give you a really good view of around the car. If you come to a junction that is a bit of a funny angle and you're sort of having to do your shoulder checks and kind of check behind you, the B pillar and the seats can kind of impact on your view a little bit, but it just means you've got to kind of stop for an additional second, take another look, change the angle a little bit, and it's not a problem at all. Most of the XKR range has got keyless entry, which if you don't know just means that the key has to be in close proximity to the car for you to unlock it and then start the engine. So as long as it's in your pocket or your bag, you haven't actually got to physically hit the fob. General reliability has been really good. They've used this 5-litre lump across the kind of Jaguar, Land Rover, Ford range, so it's a very tried and tested engine that they have kind of progressively upgraded and tweaked any kind of weaker parts, but overall the actual block itself is very unlikely to be the cause of any issues that you would have during your ownership. The biggest thing that pops up with these cars and the older XKs, the X100s, is electronics. What often happens is that people's batteries will kind of start to drain, so the voltage will be high enough. It's actually cold cranking amps, which is important for starting the engine, certainly on a cold day, but voltage just starts to kind of fluctuate and it will start to upset some of the more sensitive electronic controls on the cars. So people will start getting warnings like, I don't know, for the diff or the gearbox, they go, oh no, someone please help me. Similar to messages that I've put on forums for other cars, they've always got that tone, and actually there'll be someone helpful in the comments that would just say, do you know what, check your battery, and they say, yeah, do you know what, cheers guys, I've replaced my battery with a new OEM battery, or maybe an upgrade from the factory one, if that suits, and so it's always worth doing. And actually, yeah, batteries do get into the hundreds of pounds, so it's not something that we've got the luxury of just changing on the whim, but it's almost, batteries are kind of getting into that preventative maintenance. It's always worth doing. If you want your car to start on a button every day, then actually a new battery, if you're not sure when it was replaced, or you don't think it's as strong as it would be, or it could be, sorry, then the battery is always a good one to replace on these Jaguars or any older car, because they do throw up faults for the electronics. But overall reliability for me has been absolutely brilliant. I've had no problems at all with this car. As I said in the previous video, I'll have a 1-year annual service coming up. I will take it to a specialist rather than a dealership, just due to reliability of the dealerships and the quality of the work that the independent garages do. The independent garages, they live and breathe these cars. Often they started their business because they've got a love for the cars, and when you take it to a dealership, they just haven't got that. Often the Saturday boy who's on work experience will do the oil change, and you're just never certain, you never get that confidence when you take it in that everything is going to be done just right. And with all the horror stories from lots of different brands, even the German brands, your Mercedes and Audi, the horror stories of customer services, etc., just leads me and most of the XKR owners to go to a Jaguar specialist. So if that means you have to travel a little bit further, hell, make a day of it, you know, plan a little trip up there, plan something that you're going to do while your car's in the workshop, and you'll be doing that, go and get a breakfast or a coffee knowing that your car is in the right hands and it's going to be absolutely sorted for another year to come. And anything that might need doing, it's not urgent, they can obviously advise you that with the service and the inspection. So that would be my recommendation. But outside of that annual service, really, there's been absolutely nothing for me to do other than obviously fill it with petrol every other day. But having said that, fuel consumption is never anything I've wanted to bang on about on these videos, because it isn't why we buy these cars. My advice would be to have a look on the forums and see what some of the guys have got in the car that you're wanting to buy. So if it's an XKR you're looking for, 5 litre supercharged, then have a look at what people have actually managed to achieve, because on longer runs, obviously on a dual carriageway sat at 70, the big 5 litre lump is actually doing very little work. It might be sat at, I don't know, 2,500 RPM. So inherent in it being a big lump, where it normally is drinking a lot, actually it's doing very little work. It's kind of ticking over at a lower RPM on those longer runs. So you can realistically be getting up to, I don't know, 27, 28 miles per gallon sort of after a half an hour journey, because obviously upon initial startup and on the smaller roads as the engine's warming up, it's higher. But that average, which is the only readout it gives you on the XKR-S, it doesn't give you a real-time live readout, that average does start creeping up to around 30 miles per gallon. So that might be something that you could use to persuade the missus or the girlfriend to justify getting one of these, that on longer runs actually it will get up to a more palatable fuel consumption. Like with most modern engines, there's not actually that much to do. Those of us that have owned more kind of classic cars want to play around with things, tweak things, keep on top of things, that preventative maintenance. But there's very little to do. I've not even had to add any oil to the engine during my 11 months ownership. Before you start the car, you do get an electronic readout for the oil level, but it's always good to check manually, isn't it, with the dipstick in the engine bay, and it hasn't budged. I bought the car just after it was serviced for me, after I laid my deposit down. Obviously they made sure everything was spot on, and unlike some of the, if you're familiar with sort of old Porsches or old classic cars where people somewhat euphemistically say they breathe, which is kind of a polite way of saying they leak, modern engines don't. So I almost wish I could tell you, oh yeah, I've added some oil, so I'd be like, oh yeah, this guy knows about cars, he's on top of his preventative maintenance. But I haven't actually had to do anything in terms of oil or coolant. Within my other videos I have talked about tyres within great length, so through fear of people getting bored of it, I won't bang on about it, but generally wear is pretty good. Obviously with rear wheel drive cars you do get some horror stories about people getting through tyres very quickly. I've got the Pirelli P1s on the front and they haven't noticeably gone down in tread over the 4,000 or 5,000 miles that I've done. The Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's that I've got on the back, well, I've not had them on there long enough to actually tell, but on other cars, again, wear has been very good. So often you pay a little bit more for a tyre and you get a hell of a lot of more performance, and actually tread wear is often better than the cheap models. Now, any vehicle that has anything to do with Ford, which Jaguars of a certain era do, will benefit from their heated windscreen, which coupled with the heated wing mirrors and obviously heated elements on the rear windscreen as well, does make it really nice and convenient for winter driving. Anyone that's had older cars will have experienced waiting for asthmatic air vents to very slowly demist or even de-ice the windscreen, so you're not sat there for 5 minutes whilst the ice thaws. So the heated elements does make it really convenient for winter driving. These gorgeous leather seats with the RS badge stamped into them are heated, however they aren't cooled like some of the XKRs. So if you go for the standard XKR seats, they actually blow cold air through perforations in the leather to cool you down during summer. The RS seats don't have them, but it's more than made up for the sort of bolstering and the number of ways in which you can adjust them to achieve your perfect driving position. Now, as I'm driving down these slightly narrower roads through town, it seems appropriate to discuss the dimensions of the car. Getting in and out of the garage width-wise, absolutely no problem at all. My sister's got a little Hyundai i10, and as she reverses it into my garage, her wing mirrors have got the same clearance as this. So width-wise, public car parking spaces, absolutely no problem at all. The thing that might catch you by surprise is the length of this car. It is particularly long, and it might catch you out if you've got a smaller garage. All of the other cars that I've owned, and that includes the Nissan GTR, I've been able to get that and my daily driver into my garage, one behind the other. However, with this is the first car I've owned that I can't do that. It is that long, and it is something that took me by surprise. So in terms of general manoeuvrability, it's very agile. Driving around town, it's absolutely fine. Public car parking spaces to go into the gym or a multi-storey car park, absolutely no issues at all. There is a winter weather mode, so you've got the kind of ice icon there, which will just mean that the car selects the gears a little bit more sensibly. Again, isn't hunting down for those lower gears, and will give you a nice smooth gear change, just to give you a little bit more control over the vehicle and make it more suitable for snow or icy driving. Obviously we've got dynamic mode, which I've talked about before. All that'll do is sharpen everything up, make the gear changes a little bit quicker, open the butterfly valves in the exhaust so that they are permanently open. So if you want to start the car up and get the full exhaust sounds, you can have it in dynamic mode and it will do that. Just sharpen up the suspension, etc. You've got sport mode. The really nice thing about sport mode, again, it sharpens certain parameters up. The thing that I like most about it is when you are using the flappy paddles, it will not change gear for you, full stop. So if you leave it in first gear, you can drive for miles in first gear. It will not anticipate or try and correct what you're doing. Right, this guy's stupid, he's forgotten to change gear, I'm going to put it into second for him. It will not do that, full stop. If you hit the red line, it will not change gear. Obviously you'll hit the limiter and you'll bounce off it, and you'll keep bouncing off it until you change gear. So again, it makes it more predictable. If you want to use your engine braking and downshift on kind of more aggressive corners, and be able to come out of the apex of the corner when you're in that power band and the supercharger is online. Is that even a real ambulance? When you come out that apex, you know you're in the power band. It won't have changed up or down for you. You know exactly where you are, and you can cane it out the corner in second gear, and it will pull you out really nicely with loads of torque that the 5-litre supercharged V8 affords you. Thank you very much for clicking on this upload. This and the previous video haven't had particularly broad appeal, but instead hope to appeal to those that are actually thinking about jumping into one of these. And I think a lot of the videos are always trying to find that balance and achieve a compromise between giving all of my subscribers who have supported the channel up to this point something fun and engaging, but also trying to give genuinely informative advice and be a useful tool for those that are doing research into actually wanting to buy one of these. So thank you to everyone who has supported the channel so far. The next video is going to be a particularly nice example of a Mercedes CLK55 AMG, and actually ask, is it just an exciting car, sports car to jump into today, or is it potentially got the chance of being a good investment in a world full of electric and hybrid cars that are becoming more and more soulless and drama-free. Are people going to start romanticising platforms like that SL55, and we might actually see their prices increase? I don't know. I'm going to have a look at the car, see what it's like, do a little bit of research, and hopefully give a little bit of insight if it might be a good investment. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed so far. Since the last video, we've hit 500 subscribers, which I appreciate is a small and humble milestone, but it was still quite an exciting one to see 500 subscribers, because each one of those people have thought, actually, yeah, cool, he's put a little bit of effort into this video, I've got something out of the content, so I'll hit subscribe and see what he uploads next. So huge thank you for that. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much, folks. Take care, and I will see you later.